Hi everyone, it's Gavin G, the best thing since the Jumbo Jet, and you're listening to Therapy Suite right here on UK Health Radio, was number one Talk Health Radio. This week I speak to Robert Guice, CEO of Citron Hygiene. We'll be talking about all things to do with women and health. Welcome to the show, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm really great. Lovely to meet you, Gavin. How are you?
Lovely to meet you too. It's fine here. Just for our listeners, I was talking to Robert just before, and he's in Canada, and it's in the late 20s, so he's having lovely weather. To be fair, it's not too bad here either, but it's not as warm as where you are, Robert.
No, I understand, and I'm beginning to adjust to the Canadian summer, having adjusted to a long Canadian winter. I moved out last year, so it's the first experience for me.
What was it like in winter? How cold? It gets quite cold, isn't it?
We hit a low this winter of minus 30 centigrade, which oddly enough is about minus 30 Fahrenheit as well, I think. Yeah.
Minus 30?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto, so it's not too bad. If you talk to our colleagues, we have operations up in Edmonton, minus 45 is a regular occurrence for them.
That's cold, freezing. Oh
freezing.
gosh.
We had, just so you know, we had 1 week where we saw minus 15. We then went up to plus 30, and then it dropped back down again and snowed all within 7 days.
That is the most. I've never heard anything like it.
No, nor me.
Is
after leaving London for here, it was a big shock to the system, Gavin.
That sounds like a big shock. Gosh, I don't know how. I mean, usually when it snows in the UK, as you know, things tend to grind to a halt. In Canada, it sounds like they've got like more devices, like vehicles to help clear the roads, is it, and that kind of thing?
It's quite amazing. I have to take my hat off to them when we have a big snowfall. By the time I've dug myself out, the roads are absolutely clear. The footpaths are being cleared, and you get to work in no longer than it would normally take. And I think the biggest snowfall we had, I had about 4 feet. So by the time I dug myself out of that and could get the car off the drive, the main roads were all absolutely cleared.
Oh,
incredible.
Gosh. Okay. Well, look, welcome to the show. Robert, I think it'd be great for you to tell our listeners a bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So I live in Canada, but I'm born in the Midlands of England, and I had my first career in the IT industry. I then moved into a business management career in sort of business services. We built different businesses. And actually, I'd retired when Citron Hygiene came knocking on the door. It's people I know, it's industries I've been very close to during my working career, and asked me to come and help in the UK. And I came out and we did some work in the UK to build Citron UK, and we built a really great national business across the UK. And I'll be honest, I fell in love with the business. I really liked what we did. I liked the fact that we have a cause and a passion, and that there's more to us than just a business that's there to make money. I mean, all businesses have to make money, but there's actually something to get passionate about. We're about equality, we're about engagement and inclusivity, and it really spoke to me. And if you're going to do something with your time, my choices were play golf with my mates or help build a really great business that has an impact, and I chose the latter. And October last year, I moved out here as chief executive to run the overall company. We're in Canada, the United States and the United Kingdom. And we're really a washroom services business. And what we decided to do was take on the classic washroom business that people will have seen in the UK that does soap dispensers and hand dryers and fragrance, and really move towards being driven by period dignity and inclusivity to create sort of a period positive washroom for women across the world. And I will tell you, the UK is probably the leading country on providing a dignified experience in the washroom, and we can always do more. And here in North America, it's very much behind where the UK is. At the same time, we'd met Claire Coder, who founded Art Flow. I'd been super impressed with Claire. We did a load of research. I did a lot of reading up, and you learn that women use washrooms in a very different way than men do, and that really they are underserved and underprovided for in all of the markets we operate in. And that actually we could really drive now this concept of a dignified period, dignified experience for women, not only providing the classic sort of menstrual hygiene disposal. I think all the women, all menstruators who are listening to this will recognize that little bin that sits next to the toilet when they go to the washroom, and they'll have differing views on it. But our job was to try and make that experience as positive as possible, and at the same time get into the sort of move our business away from the idea that we provide chargeable vending machines, of which we have many thousands, if not tens of thousands out there of machines that you put coins in, and you can get pads, tampons, and other products. And we decided we'd make a strategic decision. We would no longer operate in that business. We'll respect the contracts that we've already got, but all new provision would be on free vend, so that we would put in place the arm flow machines and really deliver a great service to menstruators in those three markets, that every time we put a vend machine in, it'll be free of charge to the end user. Does that answer it, Gavin?
Yeah, that does. Thank you very much. No, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Basically, I know you do collaboration with Aunt Flo as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it does. We met Claire. Claire's a super smart young business leader. She was really focused in the US, and she's got a major piece of work to do to get sort of a dignified experience for menstruators in the US. And it's just different to the UK. I think for people listening to your show, people in the US particularly are not as comfortable talking about periods, menstruation. The whole thing is treated differently. UK has had legislation for a long time ensuring that period products are free in schools. That's not true in the US. So Claire has her work cut out working across the US, working with the different political lobbying groups, working in schools, universities, businesses, state organizations. And we worked out that we didn't really compete with each other. We're a really big provider here in Canada. We're number 3 in the UK, and we're large, but only really on the east coast of the US. And Claire asked us to be her representative initially in Canada and the UK, which we've done. That's worked really well for all of us. We love that. And then we extended the relationship down the east coast of the US, while Claire focuses on the rest of the US, which is a huge market.
That's brilliant. Tell us a bit more about the organization that you work for and projects that are going on and anything like that.
Okay, so projects that we're doing. So we're always thinking about how do we move the market to where do we believe it should be, right? So there's a classic, again, I can reference UK. So in the UK, people who go into a publicly accessible washroom, so be that in a pub, a workplace, anywhere away from home, will have a distinct experience of what that washroom is like. And our belief is we've got to make that a much more dignified experience for menstruators and a much more inclusive experience for everybody who uses that. So we're committed to things like touch-free menstrual hygiene disposal. We're committed to free vend. And then, of course, we work in the classic washroom spaces around fragrance and air care, soaps and hand sanitizers. So we're just very committed. Our tagline is elevating the washroom experience. We just think away from home washrooms, toilets should be a much better experience for everybody that's out there. So UK has legislation today on free availability of period products in schools. So we're then working outside of the school environment. We're working with universities. We're working with employers and other organizations to drive that message in about we have to do better to provide an inclusive experience for all menstruators across the UK. Here in Canada, it's more evangelizing because Canada is somewhere between the US and the UK. And Canada's just passed legislation making all federally regulated businesses provide free period products by the end of this year, which is an enormous piece of work. So what's occupying us as a business right now is 80% of our time is being occupied with suddenly there's laws in place that are requiring everything that's federally regulated. Ports, airports, trains, shipping companies all have to do that. May for me was a busy month because it's about that because of our donation programs with Aunt Flo. 10% of what we sell to our customers, whether we provide it as a service or a product, we donate to a charity to help with inclusivity. So in the UK, we picked Youth Sports Trust, which has a Girls Active program, and we just donated 73,500 pads to get girls into sport so that when girls are participating in sport, they have free availability of period products. And being clear, if they need to take some more to take home with them to use for the rest of their period, that's fine too. So we just want to make sure that we're getting out to, in this case, girls, free period products for them to use, but with a particular desire to get them into sport, because I think sport's amazing. And I think the statistics tell us lots of girls miss out on sport, partly because of the inability to afford period products.
You know, a lot of the products, are they sold commercially or they private as well, or a combination of both?
So right now, the Arm Flow products that we provide, which are organic cotton, they're amazing. Women love them, and it's amazing how popular they've become. We provide those to our customers in the UK through the service that we provide. I know, talking to Claire, that one of the options that Claire has is to make the Arm Flow period products more commercially available, i.e. available through shops and stores. And there's a huge demand from the Arm Flow users to have them freely available at the store, as well as available in their college, university, place of work. So I think we'll see them come out. I can't speak for Claire, but I know that she's under pressure to do that.
So it sounds like there's plans to kind of expand products in terms of where they are distributed to. Is that right?
Exactly. Create more availability. So our job as a business is to work predominantly with other organisations. I'm not going to say businesses, because we do work a lot with companies in the UK that provide free vend period products, but we also work with colleges, charities, government organisations. And, you know, this has been a fantastic learning curve for me as I talk to organisations out there. What there's been a realisation of is that if a woman gets her period unexpectedly, then they either miss school or they miss work. Now, from a societal viewpoint, you're excluding people from operating as part of society because they have a period, which is highly unfair. From an employer's perspective, you're potentially losing some of your workforce down to something that you could easily solve by putting a vending machine in a washroom that provides period products at the point they're needed, free of charge to the person who needs them, which seems like the most simple thing. We don't charge for toilet paper, we don't charge for soap, we don't ask you to put a coin in the slot to use the hand dryer or a paper towel. Why would we be charging for period products? And when you talk to, for example, I've talked to hotels where the vast majority of the housekeepers are female. If one of the housekeepers gets their period unexpectedly and they have to leave work, there's a major knock-on to the hotel. The room's unavailable on time, other people have to work overtime, that person potentially loses income. It's highly unfair societally, but it's also a challenge for the business. The simple answer for the business is make the period products freely available in the washroom, and strangely enough, attendance goes up, employee loyalty goes up, and it's just the right thing to do. When you talk to people, this is just the right thing to do. And we're seeing that in factories. It amazes me how our customer list is places that make food, factories. We've got some Formula One teams, bizarre. We've got everything under the sun, because society's waking up to the idea that actually there's a real business benefit, societal benefit to doing the right thing. Then when we make our charity donations on the back of that, the amount of customers that say to us, we love being part of this because getting involved in the UK with getting girls into sport is really speaking to their ESG efforts. It's really talking to what the company's values are about. It has value as they promote that internally within their own organisation. And we can come on and talk about this, but it gets people talking about periods and menstruation. And here we are, two guys talking about periods. But that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. It does happen now, and it's a good thing it happens now, because the more we can normalise periods, menstruation, the more we can bring this whole subject out into the open, the more employers, schools, organisations can provide period products and take away that stigma and that embarrassment that really shouldn't exist.
100%, absolutely. We're just going to a quick ad break and we'll be right back.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So, Robert, basically, in terms of the company, is it, I mean, I know is it the UK and Canada it operates in? Are there other countries, or am I getting that wrong? Is it global?
Now, right now, we're 3 countries. Our big markets are Canada and the United Kingdom, and then we're operating in the United States of America as well. But that's Chicago and then down the East Coast. The US is a vast market for us to tackle. So we've started down that East Coast, which is probably more culturally aligned to the UK and to Canada than other parts, right? So they're more willing to talk about period dignity than other parts.
And is there any plans to expand to other countries?
In the midterm, we'll be focused very much on the 3 countries we're in today. Over time, then we would absolutely look to expand internationally. I think there's just so much work to do in Canada, East Coast of the US and the UK today. It occupies all of our bandwidth. As I say, Canada just introducing legislation on federally regulated businesses occupies the whole bandwidth of our sort of sales teams in Canada, our operations teams, the quantity of product we're having to ship, we've never had to do before. We're facing logistical challenges that we love them and they're great to have, but they're much larger than we've ever had. And I'm having to meet with partner companies to say, how can you help me in some of the parts of Canada a little bit further away, like Nunavut? And it's hard to get the scale of geography here, right? So I can drive. I used to have an office in London and I worked a lot across Europe, and I could drive to Dusseldorf, I think, in 5 hours. I can drive for 15 hours from my home in Toronto and I'm still in the province of Ontario, just to give you a sense of the scale. So when we talk about can we service an airport or a post office or any other business in the far-flung provinces up north of Canada where I'm going to be driving for a week to get there, that's a challenge. When we've done that and we've solved those problems, we'll think about the next geography.
Absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. You know, you want to basically be able to support, where you're working with, the countries you're working with at the moment. And also, I mean, obviously, resources, you're going to need so much more greater resources, isn't it, to go global?
Yeah, and do you want to do an average job in a large number of countries, or do you want to be really great in 3? And as a business, we would rather be really great in the markets we operate in today. And they're big markets, right? Canada, UK, US, these are enormous markets. There are some overhead challenges if you want to get into the business side of it. If you migrate away from an English language country, then you start to introduce a level of complexity in your systems, in your internal communications, in your customer communications that you just don't get operating in 3. We are bilingual already, right? We operate in Quebec. So we have to do every communication, internal and external within Canada, we have to do in 2 languages today. And that has a level of complexity. If you want to add another language, that is another level of complexity beyond that. In terms of accounting systems, we've redeveloped all of our in-house systems over the last year and a half. We've upgraded, we're on common systems in Canada and the US, and that's all been done earlier this year. We're going to go live on a new system in end of September in the UK, and then there's work on the operational systems in the UK to bring those into the sort of common standard of the business. That takes a lot of work across 3 geographies. To do that over more geographies, I've done it. I've implemented SAP in a lot of countries, and that's hard work. That is an awful lot of work, and I wouldn't want to distract the business when we're at this point in the growth curve of the market.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. How much is the current crisis of living cost issue impacting period poverty?
A lot. We went out and we did research last year. If anybody wants to go to our website, and feel free to have a look at it, it'll be on there. And we can tell you exactly what went on over the last year. And I think we did our research in December of last year, and that told us, I've got to look up the number. I'll just get it. We saw that nearly 2/3 of women had altered their plans to go out and do activities because of their inability to afford period products. 17%.
Yeah, it was I think 1 out of 5 women couldn't afford period products because of the cost of living.
So I had to get some help there. So yeah, 1 in 5 women couldn't afford period products because of the cost of living crisis. And it's interesting when we do events, and I do events, and we always take pads with us for photo opportunities. I notice now when we leave the pads, sanitary pads in a box somewhere, you see people quietly coming up and taking a handful because they need them. And I'm just so you know, we're delighted about that. Absolutely delighted. We leave them behind. We want to make sure people get access to them. But we are seeing that large number of women unable to afford period products. It's stopping them going to school, going to work. It's stopping them having a normal social life. And that, if you want to know what got me back out of retirement, it is that idea that we can make a big difference to people's lives by ensuring that in all of our customers, we encourage them to provide free period products. Therefore, more people can participate in school, work, and normal social life. Youth Sports Trust was the one that really appealed to us in the UK, and donating, 70-odd thousand pounds to them was a huge thing for us, and a huge ability to get to a really core market, or a core group of people that need help, which is young women trying to get into sport. Here in Canada, we picked different charities. We picked the Native Women's Association of Canada, which is a marginalised community at times here in Canada. And we also picked Food Banks Canada so that they can find the right people who need those products. But that just tells you right now there's a burning need for free period products in the marketplace.
Obviously, there must be a lot, a huge psychological, emotional effect on ladies and not having access to the products when needed, or that kind of thing. Have you come across that information as well in terms of emotionally how people are affected?
It does affect people. It's interesting. And when I came into the job, I went out and talked to everybody, and I read books on the subject. And there is a massive. There's some great books out there, by the way, about how the world is designed for men, and I would encourage people to read those. That's fantastic. But when you talk to women, when you talk to menstruators and you tell them what you do for a living, it's amazing how much they open up about the embarrassment of discussing periods, the ability to have period products to hand. Women will surreptitiously go to the washroom, disguising them. They want them disguised, which is kind of crazy. I work in a business where there's pads and tampons on people's desks all the time because it's what we do, and nobody's embarrassed about it. So yes, there is that. I think that whole, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lack of dignity there. And well, I'll find out the date for you. We did some work around Menstrual Hygiene Day, which is the 28th of May, where we went out and interviewed people to hear their period dramas, a play on the idea of dated dramas, period dramas from England. And we got women to tell us their horror stories. And almost all of the horror stories about period are that in some visible way, they will have been seen having a period in public, and that will cause huge embarrassment to them. Now, to be honest, why would anyone be embarrassed, right? Half the world has a period, and we wouldn't be here if people didn't have periods, right? The human race would end if women stopped menstruating, because that's a natural part of the reproductive cycle. So there's nothing to be embarrassed about. But again, go to our IG, Instagram, I've got to learn this one, and you'll see those period dramas, and you'll hear the horror stories of women, girls telling us what's gone wrong. And I say in every single example, it will be, I did in some visible way have sign of a period, right? And they're embarrassed about that. Oh,
No,
and we're
of
on
course.
TikTok, I'm told. Sorry.
Oh, right, okay.
TikTok.
So there's more awareness social media-wise, basically, as well.
Yeah, we it was a great idea from our marketing team of, hey, can we go downtown Toronto and start interviewing people? And then we did that, and then we've put it out, and people are just sending in their horror stories to us about having a period. And from my perspective as a man listening to this, the thing I took away from all of the stories was, you're just worried that someone knew you were having a period, right? That was the drama. You were visibly leaking or showing it. And it's like, it really is no need to be embarrassed, right? We all know about it. So why would you be embarrassed about it?
I know you've mentioned it already, the donation program, and you've partnered with Youth Sport Trust. Can you tell us a bit more about that and why you partnered with them as well?
Right. So the statistics we look at when we do the analysis is girls participate in sport in their teenage years at a much lower rate than boys. It's below 50% participation in sport. And one of the big driving factors of that is that whole fear about periods, being seen having a period. How do you manage your period during that time, right? So we were looking at a charity that we wanted to support that resonated with us. I grew up in England playing a lot of sport. I've got sons playing a lot of sport, so I love sport. And I know the importance of sport in somebody's development. A lot of the life skills of people I know who've been very successful in life didn't come from school and university. It came from participating in different sports, their ability to work as a team, their ability to interact with other people in a nice way, comes from the playing field, not the classroom, right? The formal how do you think bit comes from the classroom. So Youth Sports Trust really resonated with us, and we were truly privileged. We got Holly Bradshaw, who's a member of Team GB, to come out when we made the donation, and we did it at a school in Nottingham. And we got to, see the girls at this school do some sports. We got to see, it was fascinating for me, very different from my school education. The year 10 girls were teaching the year 8 girls in their PE class, in their sports class. They were actually teaching them to dance, and that was wonderful because any sport's great. And if dance what's going to resonate with girls and get them participating in sport and living a healthy lifestyle, then that's phenomenal. But then we had an Olympic athlete, and Holly's in the Olympic Team GB, talk to the girls around what it takes to be an Olympic athlete, about managing your period when you're a top-level athlete and participating in sport. And she also talked about some of the body confidence issues that affect many women and girls today. So it was a real privilege for me to, just meet somebody who's participated at the very top of their sport for a long time, like top 3 in the world, which is an incredible thing and, incredibly impressive to see. A very decent, kind, warm human being with it. But then to impart that knowledge to the girls, to me, was enormous. And I wish we could sort of have that filmed and send it to every school in the country, because I think having that education from an Olympic athlete is incredible. But it brought it home to me about how embarrassed girls can be in sport about their period. So providing period products to them is so important. If we don't do that, they can't participate. If they don't have confidence in what they've got or confidence in availability of product, they're not going to participate. But also that normalization, when you hear a top-level athlete say, yeah, people have periods and we have to deal with it. You can't just manage it all around there. There was I don't know if you saw it, we can send it through to you, but there was a recent case of a distance runner, I think triathlete, who was having her period while she was running, and it was visible, right? You could see traces of blood, you could see it. And she was called out on social media for this. And she said, well, what do you want me to do, right? I run a long way, right? She runs a lot further than I could have ever run. And if I'm having a period, what do you want me to do? It's just part of life, right? And she's absolutely right. So I think, why do we pick Youth Sports Trust? For all of those reasons, for everything to do with, if we can get girls into sport, fantastic. If we can make it easier for girls to get into sport, if we can provide a distribution path to girls for free period products, and hopefully they take all they need, not just what they need for that moment, and they can therefore participate better in life, better. The more we can give them confidence, better for everybody.
100%, absolutely.
I have to say, personally, as the CEO, it's a privilege I get to do it. And it's part of the nice part of the job when you really do get to hear something like somebody like Holly talk personally to girls. And it's absolutely inspirational, and I thank her for it.
Fantastic, absolutely. We're just going to another quick ad break, and we'll be right back.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So thanks for that, Robert, so far. I mean, that's a lot of insightful information. And I know you've mentioned already about the 28th of May, which just went by, when there was Menstrual Hygiene Day. But how do we kind of keep, the subject in the public domain? I know you mentioned about social media, TikTok. Is there any other social media platforms and any other events that might be planned in future?
Yeah, there are events through the year. And if you come to our TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, depending on what generation, we've probably even got Facebook still. Feel free to come and look. 28th of May, let me just explain why it's the 28th of May. It's 5/28 over this side of the pond. And 5/28 is a woman's period on average is 5 days every 28 days. So, which is why May 28th is picked. So if anybody out there wants to try and remember when Menstrual Hygiene Day is, it's really simple. It lasts for 5 days on average every 28 days. Beyond that, I think the things that are happening in the world, it is happening, right? The idea that you and I could have talked like this even probably 5 years ago would be quite shocking, right? The fact that there's now 2 to men openly talking about menstrual hygiene, period dignity, availability of period products comfortably is part of that change. And I think we've just got to keep this going, Gavin. You, me, all the other men out there, and I appeal to the men particularly, we've got to get this to be a destigmatized subject. We've got to talk to the women in our lives, the menstruators that we know, and let them know it's okay. Don't embarrass anybody, don't shock anybody, but just let them know it's okay. The women I know all know that I'm happy to talk about periods because it's what I do for a living, and I'm happy to talk about it. We have to be respectful, but we also have to be inclusive. The sheer fact we talk about it makes life an awful lot better. So I would say, by all means, go to our social media. The Art Flow social media and Art Flow website's fantastic. Claire's really great at this, and her team are really great at this. And if you want to follow Claire Coder, Coder, please do. She's on IG. I'm not sure she's on Facebook, far too young, and she's on TikTok. And you can see an awful lot of great content coming from Claire and a lot of the advocacy. And particularly if you're in the UK, you'll see some of the things that we do in the UK, and we get Claire over to the UK at times. But you'll also see what's happening in the US, which is really fascinating because it's such a fascinating country in many ways to see what's happening there. And then please do lots of social media. There's a lot of great women communicators on IG and some on TikTok who are just promoting or discussing period dignity issues all of the time. So again, well worth following. I follow a few and they're absolutely fantastic and insightful. I'll pick something up and then come and talk about it with my colleagues in marketing and other parts of the company and learn even more than I do today.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I know education is key. How do we implement more of that to help the subject?
That's a real tough one, Gavin, because I think, I've grown up in the UK, and I think coming through the UK education system, I don't think enough was made of explaining period dignity issues in schools, and I don't think it's discussed enough in workplaces. And I think that's the talk that we said earlier. It's about men talking about this as well as women. It's about men understanding how the world is not always designed for women, and we need to think about that. We need to change that. There's a book, I think, Designed for Men is the book I read when I first came into the job, that talks about a woman would never design a washroom the way that a man would design a washroom. If you look at the way just cubicles are organized, women would make them longer, somewhere to put a bag, something to rest a bag on or hang a bag on. They would offset them so that there's more room on the side of the toilet for the menstrual hygiene disposal unit. It's amazing. We just don't think about that as men. Seatbelts are tested for men, not for women. There's all of these issues. And that's what we need to change, that fundamental idea that we just don't take account of what a menstruator needs, either in the workplace, in the home, or anywhere away from home. And that is about education. It's not just about the biological aspects of menstruation. We understand that. It's about the implications of menstruation on a menstruator and how it affects their sense of well-being, how it affects their ability to be included in the workplace, their ability to be included in education, how it can just affect their decision on whether they go out and where they go to. It's interesting. I have female friends who've been out with me in London, and it's, it could be one of my favorite restaurants, and they'll say, "Hey, Robert, we're not going there again because the washrooms aren't good enough. The experience in the washroom is just not great because a woman uses a washroom in a very different way than a man uses a washroom. And until we take account of that, the world's going to be very different." So as a business, the bit I can do about that is we are out there meeting with businesses, organizations, educational establishments all of the time and explaining it to people. And we're asking them questions around menstrual hygiene disposal, free vendor period products. And I'll tell you, a lot of them are really keen to engage with us and want to listen and learn and want to be challenged. And then there are places you go to and they say, we just don't want to talk about that. And that's the bit that has to fundamentally change.
You know what? It's very interesting. I never thought about that, people consider they might not even go to certain places because they're not that well equipped to provide what's needed, basically. So that means people are avoiding going to certain places, and that's very interesting.
Yeah. So one other partnership we have is with the Loo of the Year. So again, another website you can go to that I think they are on Facebook. So they're on other web media sites as well. So we sponsor the Loo of the Year Awards with Aunt Flo, and we've created a category for the period dignity washroom. The reason being is, the Loo of the Year exists to drive up the standards of away from home washrooms, and they do a great job. Absolutely phenomenal job that they do in terms of shining a spotlight on the great away from home washrooms, providing awards, different categories. And it's great because businesses are competing to be at the very top of their game, and to win the award for Loo of the Year in the industry is a big thing, right? So we don't compete because we're a provider. We're not actually doing washrooms. But holiday parks, historic monuments, just public loos, they're all in different categories and they're all being assessed. So the team created new categories for things like changing places where you have adult disabled children who need to be able to be fully changed, or they need a hoist for their service, and they give an award for that. And that's great because what that's done is driven up the standards in those washrooms that provide that, and encourage more organisations to provide that kind of service, which allows more people to have a day out. Let's put it bluntly, it allows more people to participate in society because the washroom facilities are there. With them and with their agreement and their support, we've introduced a category for the period dignified washroom, which will have to include menstrual hygiene disposals, free vendor period products, because again, we just want to drive up the standards in away from home washrooms, and the Loo of the Year want to do the same thing. So that really does shine a light onto that sort of whole idea that washrooms need to be better. And again, if you ask people who have different needs of a washroom, women, people potentially with disabilities, they need something different, and they need to know that when they're going somewhere, the facilities are there. If you're a woman on your period, you need to know that there's an adequate washroom facility for you when you get there. Now, let's just talk about two other things quickly if I can. So there's two times in a woman's life where periods may be irregular. When they first start their period, when that first happens, a girl's periods can take a while to settle down. The other time, and people often forget this, is also as a woman approaches menopause, her periods will become more irregular. So that availability of period products, proper disposal, a hygienic environment to operate in becomes super important. Because if you don't know that it's there when you get to the destination, you're not going to go. Or if you go and it's not what it needs to be, it's a disappointment and you're probably not going back. And they were big learnings, again, as I was starting to research and I was starting to talk to women about these issues. That's what was really highlighted to me. And actually the approaching menopause was a really big issue, because for a lot of those women, it becomes hugely irregular, and that becomes a real challenge to manage. So we've sponsored with the Loo of the Year a little app that will allow you to put in there what your requirements are, and it'll allow you to do your journey plan, knowing that all the way along your journey, the washrooms that you need are available, and also look up destinations and understand what washroom facilities are available. But Gavin, I would just say to you, next time you're talking to a female friend, wife, partner, whoever, ask them about their washroom experience. Engage in that conversation because it's incredibly enlightening.
No, absolutely. If someone's listening to this and needs support, what can they do?
Oh, that's a damn good question. I think from our perspective, all we can encourage them to do is to go to talk to their employer, go to talk to their place of work, go to talk to their establishment where they are, and encourage them to do the right thing. They should also, when they get the opportunity to interact with one of their representatives, do that. And again, we do a lot of work, particularly over this side of the pond, of standard letters for MPs. Now, British schools all have to provide free period products. Now, there are concerns around some of those things. There's a story recently on the BBC that was fascinating about a girl saying, yes, they have to provide them, but we can't get hold of them. And that's one of the things around this availability is it's not just are they provided, but can you actually get them, and can you get them in a way that's not embarrassing, and do you have to go and ask a man for a free period product, right? Those things are real issues, and people should just speak up. And the big thing I would say, speak up, whether that's your councillor, whether that's your MP, whether that's your boss. Please don't be embarrassed to go off and tell people what you need, demand better, And my experience has been the more as men we learn about this, the more willing we are to do the right thing. And to the men listening, just please make sure that we're listening. Please make sure that we're not embarrassed to talk about it. It's not really an embarrassing subject. It's just half of the population has a period. Just get used to it.
Of course. There may be, I know we crossed education before, but it comes back to that, isn't it? Educating people around the subject matter to feel more comfortable in holding those discussions, because especially as a boss or in HR, wherever it might be, they need to be having these discussions, to the ladies, if that subject comes about,
I think a lot of women avoid the subject because they think we as men will be embarrassed. And I think we as men need to make sure we're not embarrassed. And most of us have had to deal with menstrual issues in our private lives, right? We have wives, partners, sisters, daughters, mothers. You have to just accept this is part of life and there's no need to be embarrassed about it. And I think the most important thing we can do is that letting people know, signifying that we're okay. If you want to talk about it, we're okay to talk about it. But you don't have to talk about it, right? It's not something where we should go out there and embarrass anybody. But we should also recognize that many women aren't comfortable talking about it, largely because of our own embarrassment, right? Because of male embarrassment, and they're uncomfortable in the subject. And the rule we have here is we talk about periods a lot. Whether we talk about someone's specific period is very much up to them. Right?
Absolutely. And just finally, what is your dream for the future with your work?
That's a simple one. I have a number of dreams. The first one is I'd like to see all of those chargeable vending machines gone. That's the most reasonable one. The idea that women still have to go into a washroom with a pound coin. I've been some places. I think Harrods was to go and get a pad or a tampon when you might need one. I think is those days have to go. As a business, I'd love to see us really get into the markets that we're in today and really get the concept of a period dignified washroom experience to be the norm, that people actually talk about it. The day I go out with our salespeople and we go and visit businesses and nobody says to me, I don't want to talk about that subject, will be a great day. Right? That will be a truly great day. So that's, Gavin, for now, that's my dream. Get there and we're happy people.
Brilliant. How can my audience help if they can?
Things we've talked about, right? I think, let's just get used to the fact that half the population has a period. So let's just accept that it's a fact of life, be willing to engage, to signify that we're open to the conversation. For employers, for organizations out there, take the time, go visit the washroom and look at it through the eyes of a woman having a period, and how would you feel using that? If you have to, or if you've got somebody that you can ask them to take you through how they feel using that washroom as a menstruator rather than as a man, right? Us men need to look through different eyes if we're going to do this. So for me, they're the big things. In the near term, that's the big stuff. But just talk about it. Get used to talking about it. Get used to it. Celebrate Menstrual Hygiene Day on the 28th of May. Explain to people why it's called Menstrual Hygiene Day and why it's there. If you've done that a couple of times, you'll be really comfortable with the subject, I promise you.
Brilliant. Robert, that's been brilliant. If people wish to touch base with yourself, would that be okay? And,
sure.
Are there organizations, are there some signposting you can do for us, for our listeners?
So we've got our website, citronhygiene.co.uk or .com. If you want to get hold of me, I don't know if we can give you my email address to put out later, but the quickest way would be LinkedIn. But you can communicate with us as an organization on TikTok, on IG, on LinkedIn, fill out a website form, and we'll be really happy to hear from you. I know people out there will be thinking, he doesn't want to hear what I've got to say. I promise you I do. I spend my life out there listening to people. It's very easy in a CEO chair to get very internally focused, but actually I like the external part. I like to hear what people are saying. I love to hear the questions, because the questions tell me how people are thinking about things. It's where we get great ideas from, and our external relationships are really important to us. So, feel free, please do. I'm very open to hearing from everybody, to interacting anytime people want.
Can people go straight to the website, Citron Hygiene? I can spell it out for people if they need it.
Yeah, citronhygiene.co.uk or .com. Either will work.
Lovely. Citron spelled Citron. I actually just Googled it now and it came up, which is brilliant. So people can obviously go via that way to get hold of yourself as well.
Yeah, Google Citron, please. Citron. Don't click on the paid link.
Thank you so much for today. It's been really insightful. Much appreciate that. Okay.
Thanks, Gavin. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
And thank you to our listeners. You know, you can find me at GavinJ417 on Instagram. Until next time, take care.